unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty, brought to you in partnership with MyPillow.
I don't know how many Catholics are here, but if you're Catholic, there is no way you can be voting for these people. These people are a nightmare. I don't know what they have against Catholics, but Catholics are treated worse than anybody.
All right, more on communist hatred of Catholics later, but first...
What possibly could they say about Donald Trump that hasn't already been said?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been convicted now of these 34 crimes, supposed made-up crimes, and his numbers go up.
All right, 13 days to go, and at bat today is Souls and Liberty political consultant Jim Ellis. Jim, as we move into the home stretch, I'm guessing you would much rather be on Team Trump right now than on Team Kamala.
Well, Gary, I think it's hard to see where the Trump campaign couldn't be doing any better right now. I mean, all of the indicators are extremely positive for them. I mean, there's critical ones. Obviously, the polling is showing him up in these critical states. The Georgia poll from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is run by the University of Georgia, that's one of the better polls in the state. They had Trump 4 up yesterday. You've got him up in Pennsylvania and in Arizona. Those appear to be his 3 best states right now, and up in North Carolina. Remember, if he wins North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, it's over.
Right.
And he's really looking very strong, and Nevada's coming along too as well. And then the second thing is the early voting. Those numbers look pretty good. I mean, the partisan breakdown is moderately good for the Republicans, but the rural versus urban is really good, where the rural early votes are way up and the urban are pretty far down almost across the country. So that's a big change. And then finally, you've got the reaction from the Democrats and some of the moves they're making. Yeah. And it all points to a Trump victory coming up on the November 5th, or whenever we find out, which I'm sure will be in political overtime with these states, the way they count the ballots now.
Yeah, I want to get to that later in the show, because that's kind of one of those, like, it's sort of keeping the major explosion of enthusiasm tamped down a bit. We're going to talk about that later in the show. But I'd like to ask you right now, do you think, first of all, Trump has never gotten the numbers that he's getting now? And he's like at the 48-ish plus percentage. He's always been down at like 46-ish. And, all the, political, crazy communist, liberal media, political pundits have always been, he's got a ceiling at 46. Well, he's beginning to broach 48 and a half, maybe even 49. Do you think this is more or less of a case of people saying, well, that's it, I'm going for Trump, and his numbers are going up as a result? Or people just saying, you know what, she's a freaking nutbag. There is no way, and hers is just going down. What do you think it's more of? I know it's both, but which do you think is more?
I think it's a pretty good combination. I think it's more of that the more people are getting to know her, the less they like her. I mean, they know Trump. I mean, there's no question about that. People know, and most everybody has an opinion formed of him. But she's sort of an open slate, and they were keeping her that way for a long time. And Gary, now we know why. I mean, she's performed so badly on these interviews, we can see why the Democratic strategists were holding her away from these types of interviews early on. The interesting thing is they've changed that now, and they're allowing her to do these interviews, and none of them have
interviews.
Well.
I got to put air quotes around that, Jim. Interviews. Yeah. They're not really interviews. Although I will say, every now and then, I'm kind of surprised at the question that comes flying out, and so is she, apparently.
And so is she. But, and sometimes she just blows it. I mean, that MSNBC reporter that had her on, or I guess it was NBC, that asked her about the Joe Biden situation and what would you do differently. I think she asked that question to help Kamala, because I'm sure she figured, well, Kamala must have a better answer now after she blew it before. And then it turned out she didn't.
No.
So, I mean, that looked like it might have been a tougher question for Kamala, but I think it was asked to actually help her, assuming that Kamala had a way to spin her way out of that previous mistake, but she didn't. So it's it just gets worse every time. And now we really see why they didn't want her in these interviews. The surprise is that they're doing them now. I guess they think, well, we got to throw a Hail Mary. So we might as well let her out there and see what she can do, because the trajectory we're on isn't working.
Yeah.
So they hoped for...
Definitely seems to be part of
I doubt they're
thinking.
praying for a miracle, but
Well,
they hope for one.
That is if they actually prayed and believed in God, which I'm pretty sure, you're at the wrong rally. All right, Jim,
you're at the wrong rally,
Yeah, you're the wrong rally. Come back. We're going to tell the audience here, we're going to be talking about the battleground states, announcing they won't know the results until days and days later. What? Be right back. The establishment has tried to assassinate President Trump twice, but we can't really be shocked that those who slaughter 1 million unborn babies each year would try to kill one more human being who stands in the way of their diabolical agenda. Trump, like every one of us, including all of us at Souls and Liberty, is a sinner. But like all of us, he is in the fight and fighting for all of us to get one more chance, maybe a last chance, to save the republic. We must hang together, or as Benjamin Franklin said, we shall hang separately. And maybe far sooner than many imagine, because communists take over and always persecute Christians and Catholics in particular. Let us help you fight these forces of evil. Become a monthly supporter today so we can continue giving you the information, the tools of our faith, and the support network you need to go out and save souls and save our nation. Join our merry band of happy warriors and click below to get into the fight. We need you, we need each other. Join the resistance. Become a monthly donor today. All right, Jim, now Maricopa County in Arizona and North Carolina and Michigan and Pennsylvania are all saying, hey, forget about any results on election night. Is this shades of 2020 again? And what do Republicans have in place to make sure that it's not a redo of 2020?
Well, the second question is, I'm not sure how much they can do, really. I mean, it's these officials that have the control over that. And I mean, their excuse will be and is, well, we're trying to verify all these ballots and make sure they're legal ballots, and that's why it takes so long. That's why in California, they say they verify every signature, and they got over 17 million ballots likely to deal with, because it's almost all mail there, election by mail. So that's the excuse they're using for having this elongated counting process. So we'll just see how long people are willing to put up with this. But that's why, I mean, Arizona's definitely adopted the California system. And the reason they did is because they did take a lot of flack for how the election was handled in not only 2020, but in 2022,
right,
where there was accusations of voter fraud there. Georgia, we saw that. They've taken steps to try to clean it up. That's their public posture, and that's why they're saying it's taken so long. Now, North Carolina, you got to worry about, because they've got a very partisan board of elections that will have to certify the election. And so they're going to delay it. If they're obviously they're already saying they're going to delay it. And there's no real reason for that there, but we'll just have to see. I think here's where I think the media won't go along with that either. And you tell me if I'm wrong on this. I mean, they want the information. They need something to report, right?
Right.
So they're going to want numbers. And they're going to put some pressure on these officials, I think, to get these numbers done quicker. Or am I wrong on that? Do you think, from your experience in the media, would you say that's the case?
Well, I mean, it depends on how down with if they think that Trump is going to win it, the media, if the media, good or bad media, thinks that Trump is going to win it, then, they'll be like, give us the numbers so we can look like we're doing our job and blah, 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 and all that. If they think the delays will cause another 2020 to happen, they'll be fine with dragging it out until, 2046, if it takes that long. Because, it's not the media in the sense that we understand the media anymore. I guess one of the things I'm concerned about here is that, or I think is worth being concerned about, is, first of all, these are the exact same states, minus Wisconsin so far. These are the exact same states that, all did the, 3 a.m, jack up 500 million votes, all of a sudden flipped over to Biden, as happened in 2020.
Yeah,
and here we are again. And you tell me 4 years later, you can't fix this?
Well, they don't. They're claiming they are. I mean, they are claiming that this is the fix to make sure that they're verifying these ballots. But Michigan, I don't think that will be the case because their new law doesn't include any verification. So,
Right.
I mean, are they going to hold all the ballots and not release any numbers at all? I don't know. We'll have to see what they decide to do. I think it's going to be interesting to see if that's what they pull.
Yeah, and then they just got, the GOP just got, both in North Carolina and Michigan, got court rulings handed down saying, no, that's okay. Michigan can, bring those 12,000 ballots from overseas in, even though somebody who's voting in that may not actually ever have lived in Michigan. Like, what the hell are you talking about? There's so much manipulation going on behind the scenes. And I want to sort of play the role of the viewer here and get your response back to this. I mean, there's various stages along the way that you can cheat. There's the pre-election polls and like trying to, the suppression polls and the jacking them up and get the enthusiasm up on the bad guys' side, all that sort of stuff. But eventually the polls fade away and the votes start coming in. Okay, cheating can go on at the point of early voting. It can go on at mailboxes, stuffing the ballot boxes. It can go on at the actual polls, the feeding in the machines. We're hearing reports from all over the country now that people are doing the electronic machine, and they're voting for Trump, and then the ballot spits out and it says it's Biden. We've 2 or 3 of those in North Carolina, a couple in Georgia. I think 1 or 2 of them were in Arizona that I've heard so far. It's like, oh, here we go again. And that's all the process before you actually get to tabulating the votes. That becomes another area of cheating. I think this is one of these things that people are like, you know what? Something just stinks in Denmark right now. There's so many points along the line of where cheating could happen that is it possible to monitor all of them? What's your reaction to all that?
Well, it's going to be very difficult, but I think those are actually all minor compared to the biggest problem of all is who's on the lists. And you have these states, there's 24 of them, that now give driver's licenses to these illegal migrants. Mm-hmm. And in some states, they have this automatic registration based on the driver's license. So all of a sudden, those names become legal registrants.
Right.
That's a bigger problem because the rest of that, they're going to be under a lot of pressure, these officials and things. And they don't like that. They don't like what's gone on either because it makes them look like they're corrupt. And the ones that aren't don't like that. And so they're going to be pressuring, too, to get it right, I think. There's a lot of people that regardless of Trump, even if they say, well, Trump wins, he wins, we're going to do this right. There's a lot of that. But I think the bigger problem is who's on the list.
Right. Well, and
all of a sudden, if these lists come out.
This might be a question more for Trey Traynor because he's on the Federal Election Commission. Yeah. I might ask him about it hopefully tomorrow. But which prevails if there's a state law that says, well, you've got a driver's license even though you're not a citizen, so that puts you onto the voter roll and therefore you can vote. Is a state allowed to have that happen in a federal election?
Yeah, the state controls their own ballot. That's why we have so many different rules and laws that govern it, because every state's a little bit different and every state controls the ballot.
But can a state? Well, I guess the question is there a federal law that non-citizens cannot vote regardless of what state they're in and regardless of what that individual state may allow? Yes,
absolutely there is.
That's what I thought.
The question is that they have to challenge these people. See, the difference will come down, and then you've got to individually challenge these people. Well, they're not citizens, and here's the proof they're not. Individually. And you have such a limited amount of time. In this country, we take, 4 years to investigate anything, right? At least.
Right.
But they've only got a couple of weeks here. And because you have, every state has a certification deadline, that's the deadline that the state must report to the Congress and to their state capital who has officially won the elections.
Right.
Because obviously these people have to begin taking their seats and offices. So there is a date, and every state has the certification deadline. The latest one is California, December 13th. New York is second latest at December 12th. Those two are probably going to decide what happens on the House majority.
Sure.
But the other states are much earlier than that. And so therefore, I mean, you have to make all your challenges before the election's certified. So it's really difficult to do. It's really difficult to do, and they've taken advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, short of like walking into the Secretary of State's office or the election clerk's office or whatever each individual state calls it, short of walking in there, you know, Yosemite Sam with guns blazing, I don't know how you fix this, how you address it. I mean, you know, I suppose it has to be a so big it cannot be rigged case, even allowing for illegals voting and, you know, mailbox being stuffed and all that sort of stuff. You know, Trump has to win by 3, 4, 5, 6 points. But I think at that point, you know, come January 20th, I think he needs to start arresting people and throwing them in jail for treason. Because how do you stop this ever again?
Yeah, well, I think it's because you have to have more stringent election laws, and so therefore on the citizens. Now, the House tried to do that, of course, but Schumer in the Senate wouldn't even take it up,
right.
And that was passing the Citizenship Act again, you know, to require exactly what we're talking about. The House did pass that this year, but of course Schumer in the Senate won't do it, and none of the Democrats would vote to add that on. So, well, what's that tell you?
Right.
I mean, they want more than American citizens voting in these elections.
Sure.
That's what it tells you.
It is interesting. One of the ballot initiatives for Nevada is, you know, only citizens can vote and you have to produce voter ID and all of that stuff. And apparently that one ballot initiative is driving huge numbers of people to early voting there. And if you're going to be voting for that, and that's going to be one of your major motives for going out, well, you got to believe that's also a pro-Trump vote also. And that's in the state of Nevada.
Yeah. Well, and that's really where in the initiative stage we have to see some more action coming here in the future, because they've got to clamp down on some of these laws. Now, that's why they want the ballot harvesting too. See, the ballot harvesting is key to all this,
right?
Because you've got these people that are registered by driver's license in these states, and Nevada is really the only one of the battleground states where they have automatic registration of these driver's licenses that goes to the ballot. Now, Pennsylvania's trying that too. The governor, you know, came out with like an edict and said, okay, now we're going to have registration by driver's licenses, automatic. Well, you know, I would think the legislature would have to pass a new law, but apparently they're just trying to do it. And we've never seen things like this happen before, where these people just, the government, and Biden was the king of this, just doing stuff. Supreme Court says he can't fund that student loan situation. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
So, you know, the more they get away with that, the more we're going to see it. But when you have the citizens, with everybody registering to vote automatically based on the driver's license, they give the driver's license to illegals, and then they're on the rolls.
Yeah.
So, and then you got ballot harvesting. So anybody can pick up these ballots. Oh, we'll handle this for you. You know. So it may not even be these people voting, but their names may vote.
Correct. Yeah, that's the concern, of course, because they know who the people are.
Democrats but how much of that's going to go on, I think it's undetermined, but I think it's got to be a concern. But there's so much attention to it now that I think it's harder to do all this. I'm not sure how long people are going to put up with this.
Yeah, it does.
Why can't we get these? You know, back in the 40s and so, we had those elections. Harry Truman, remember in 48, that night, it was all over. And then most elections we've had, it's been that way. It's only these last few. Why does it take now weeks? It takes weeks in California.
Yeah.
And the French remember the France elections in France? And that night, boom, 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 it was done.
Yeah.
So the technology's there. So in this era of greater technology, we can't count the ballots.
Faster? Yeah, really. I thought computers were supposed to be faster than people's brains. All right, Jim, when we come back, we'll be talking about the early voting trends. What so far, based on what we've looked at now, I think it's about 12 or 13% of the United States voting age population has already cast a vote. What do we know? What can we glean from all of that? We'll be right back.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size MyPillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.
No matter who wins in November, we have to embrace that we are living in a post-Christendom culture. And the heart of that is a rejection of the gospel. As one item on our agenda to combat this, Souls and Liberty is hosting our first annual retreat at sea. You might be familiar with the annual event we produced for over 10 years at Church Militant. Dr. Jules Gomez, our Rome correspondent, and I are going to be doing the presenting, and the theme is Christians in Exile Triumphing in Adversity, which provides a whole range of discussions to think about. Now, we sail out of Galveston, Texas to the Western Caribbean November 10th to the 17th, yes, right after the election. I think all of us are probably going to need it one way or the other. Please join us for serious discussion, spiritual preparation, and bonding, very important, bonding with fellow Catholics. Registration information is provided below and on our site at soulsandliberty.com/retreat-at-sea 2024. So sign up and we hope to see you there. All right, Jim, now we have actual ballots being cast, not just polling information, but there does seem to be some alignment between what we're able to kind of figure out as we look at the polls, those tea leaves, and the trends in early voting. What do we see?
Well, I think we're seeing a lower vote overall in 2024 than we did in 2020. And that makes sense because remember, the courts installed that temporary all mail, pretty much it was universal access to mail voting. That all went away after COVID, and states had to go back to the way they operated before. So therefore, unless you changed your law, that all went away. So it's not a surprise that I think we're seeing a little bit lower turnout from based upon 2020 versus now. About 16 million by last count votes are already in. Remember, so that's going to be 12-15% of probably what the final vote is, and we've still got a long way to go. I mean, that's just the early vote, if you will. And then we're moving into some states will cut this off the weekend before the election. Some states go right up to election day. Mm-hmm. Again, they're all different. So I think what we're seeing, though, are some very interesting trends. The partisan numbers look, about like they did before. I'd say in some states, the Democrats are turning out a little bit higher than they did before. But in most states, the Republicans are. Nevada, in particular, is a really good signs out there. And but what I've really looked at and gone down further, and my source on this is the Target Early, Target Smart is the website. Target Early, Target Smart, and it's really good. Mm-hmm. And it has been a very, very effective tool in the past two elections to kind of get an idea on what may be happening. And the way you look at it is, how are the Democrats performing versus previous Democrat performance, and how are the Republicans performing against their previous Republican numbers? Don't look at it crosswise. Right. The Democrats are always going to have more people vote early, and the Republicans will have more people on election day. That's just the way the two parties vote. But how are you doing in versus your previous vote history? Right. And if there's an upsurge one way or another, that's usually a pretty good indication who's going to win. And we are seeing that. And we're particularly seeing that when you look at the rural versus suburban versus urban vote. And in every case, you see the rural numbers higher than they were before. That's a very good sign for Trump and Republicans. And the urban numbers, the city numbers, are much lower. Then the suburban vote, that's pretty mixed. That's about on par with where it has been before, maybe a little bit up in some states, maybe a little bit down in others. And that's a big portion. So that seems to be what we've seen before in that group. But definitely the rural voters are turning out in higher numbers, and the urban voters, at least on early votes, less so. And that's just virtually across the board.
Is there among the battleground states, if you were to kind of put a ranking on them, and on a scale of what looks the best in terms of winning the state based on early voting patterns for Trump, do things look really good in
I would put
Pennsylvania?
Arizona.
Arizona?
Arizona would be number one. Arizona's numbers have looked good for quite a while, and the early vote is bearing that out. So I'd say Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, in that order.
Wow, really? Pennsylvania number 2.
You know, Pennsylvania, I think there's a lot of things happening there. I mean, the numbers look good. The rural versus urban looks really good. But the way the Democrats are responding in Pennsylvania tells us that their numbers, they're panicked.
Yeah.
And if you look at Senator Bob Casey, for example, now he's getting nervous about his race.
Yes, he is.
So on Friday, he comes out with a new ad. And what's in the new ad? Oh, all of a sudden, he's saying he supports the Trump trade policy.
Yeah.
And he stood up to Biden on fracking.
Yeah.
And he's independent. Now, when he did all this is beyond me.
Right.
But now he's saying he's doing all this and actually using Trump in his ad in a positive, trying to align himself a little bit more with Trump. Now, here's a guy that votes Democrat line on everything.
Bob Casey voted twice to impeach Trump. Threat to democracy.
Yes.
And now he's his bestie. Hey, look at Donnie and me. You know, we go play pool and have beers together. What?
And the same thing's happening in Wisconsin with Tammy Baldwin, the two-term incumbent Democrat senator. Now, she's running an ad that talks about how bipartisan she is and has a video clip of a signing ceremony where Trump, as president, was signing a bill that she authored into law. And talking about how bipartisan she is. So she is also using Trump in a positive way in her ads. This is a complete change, as you know, from what we've seen for years.
Yeah.
And so that tells you, what's that tell you? It tells you an awful lot.
Sure.
And then Barack Obama having to go into Philadelphia to lecture black males that they have to vote for her.
Because they're sexist.
I mean, when he has to do that, they are in trouble.
Yeah.
Then you also have Senator Fetterman. Fetterman's been out there banging the drum here for a couple of weeks saying, I'm telling the Democrats they got a problem here. There's an undercurrent in the state and Trump can win.
Yep.
Every signal, I think, points to that.
I think another interesting little
election
fact
night, key states, North Carolina first. Trump must win there. That is one of his 25 states that he carried twice. He's got to have it again. That's number one. Number 2, Georgia. Look there. If he wins there, if he's winning those 2, look to Pennsylvania. If he wins that one, it's over because he has enough. At that point, he needs to flip 35 votes and keep all his previous coalition in line. If he does that, and those states do that for him, then he wins. And it doesn't matter what the other battleground states do. But I think he does even better in some of these others. I had a conversation last night with a former congressman from Michigan. He thinks Trump's got a pretty good chance to pull Michigan out. And if that's the case, and Wisconsin, they're obviously nervous. And I think Arizona definitely comes through for him. And Nevada's looking pretty good. I mean, it takes 270 to win. You know, some of these projections are showing Trump maybe in the 312 to 320 range.
Right. It's, I think one of the things that's interesting in Pennsylvania is people may have forgotten. It didn't really make a lot of national news because, this was during the, Catholics are domestic terrorist stuff, and Merrick Garland was unleashing his DOJ against anybody who even sneered at Biden. And a piece of news that happened in Pennsylvania was there was an Amish family, a farmer and his family, who were growing their own food and just selling chicken eggs and whatever they were growing, cucumbers or whatever it was they were growing. And the Department of Agriculture, Biden's Department of Agriculture came crashing in, we're fining you, we're this, we're that, and everything. That has kind of, how to say it politely, pissed off the entire Amish community, who now, to a man, practically have all registered to vote. And that has never happened before. I mean, the Democrats have done what Republicans have never been able to do, which is to get the Amish community to become political for them. They didn't do anything. The Democrats just did this, pissed off every Amish family in the entire state. And now it's about 230 to 240,000 voters who were not in the pool last year, who are all in for Trump right now. I mean, what are you thinking here?
Yeah. And it's showing up.
Yeah.
In 2016, when Trump won the state, remember, he won the Pennsylvania in 2016.
Right.
There were 916,000 more Democrats registered than Republicans.
Right.
916,000. The new numbers just came out now that registration is closed. That gap is closed to now 298,000.
Wow.
That is 600,000 people different than when Trump won the race in 2016. That is huge. And part of it is what you were just talking about. And we saw, and then we had 55,000 people in Pennsylvania change their registration from Democrat to Republican.
Yeah.
On the last, as registration closed. These are all positive signs for Trump.
Yeah.
And then you add them all up, all the ones we've talked about. That to me, it suggests Trump's got a pretty good chance to take Pennsylvania, and if he does, he probably wins the election.
Let me ask you this. Do you think if Trump wins PA and Casey is defeated, does Pennsylvania essentially go the way of Florida at that point and now has made the shift? There was a little back and forth. First it was blue, then it was red, then it was blue again, but then it was trending, and then it's leaning.
Yeah.
I mean, to win the White House vote and unseat not just a sitting Democratic senator, but a senator whose last name is Casey in Pennsylvania. I mean, that seems to me like a stake has gone into the ground there, and Pennsylvania is red.
If that happens, I'm not sure it does on Casey.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're quite a ways from that. If it does, to answer your question regarding will it go the way of Florida, no, because a lot of the Florida change, and again, that's changed immensely. So let's go back to 2018 when Senator Rick Scott was first elected. He's unseated. He was the sitting governor at the time. He unseated the Democratic U.S. Senator Bill Nelson, who had a long career in Florida politics.
Sure.
But he only won by 10,000 votes out of 8 million ballots cast.
Right.
In 2018, the Democrats had 257,000 more registered voters than Republicans. Today, that number is 1,013,000 more Republicans than Democrats.
Wow.
That's how much the state has changed. But Florida is one of the biggest move-in states. I mean, you got a lot of people moving into the state. And obviously, a lot of these people are conservatives that are moving there. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. Pennsylvania is not that way. Pennsylvania loses seats in reapportionment every decade. And so that's not a move-in state by any stretch. So you're not seeing the change in the population that you have in Florida that really counted. I think that was the number one reason it's changed so much.
Well, let me ask you one last question about Pennsylvania, because it is important. I mean, you know, it's very important for Trump. I think it's critical. If she loses Pennsylvania, I don't know where's her path from that point. So they're both fighting.
Well, it's really tough.
Yeah, I don't know. Where would she go pick it up? She'd have to, like, I don't know, flip Texas or something, which, by the way, she's going to be down here in Houston on Friday. Yes. Kind of an odd move. Like, why would you come? Why aren't you in a battleground?
Another odd move from them. I'm not, and I don't know why she did that Fox News interview with Brett. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. Well, we can't explain. Those are all signs of panic.
Yeah, absolutely. They're you know, they kind of don't make sense. I mean, you know, that one. Let's go back last week to the Al Smith dinner and, you know, sort of randomly chat about this for a moment. Not just the fact that it was kind of like an insult to Catholics and didn't show up and all that, but her campaign manager on this particular issue is a woman by the name of Linda Chavez. Linda Chavez is the granddaughter of Cesar Chavez, and you know, the California farm workers organizer back in the 60s and 70s. Actually gets into the 80s as well. what a lot of people don't realize is that Cesar Chavez was highly opposed to illegal immigration for the same reason that other folks are. They come in and they work for nothing and they take jobs away and all of that sort of stuff. Kamala destroyed Chavez on a phone call for 30 minutes. I mean, she called her every name under the sun, broke her down in tears, because it was Chavez who put together that, well, you're not going to go, you shouldn't go because it's a Catholic thing and they're going to rip on you and all that. So let's make this silly little video, which further insulted Catholics. I mean, she first doesn't go, then she sends in a stink bomb video. I mean, they don't seem to know up from down. And I think that's what has a lot of people kind of concerned going, are they crazy like a fox here? Or are they really just, they don't know what the hell's going on and they're just throwing everything against the wall? What's your opinion on that?
Because they're listening to their ideologues and not their political professionals. That's what that tells me. It's the whole left-wing ideologue, the extreme leftist radicals that they have involved with her. And she's one of them.
Yeah.
And so naturally, she's going to be more likely to listen to them than a political professional. And Biden was doing the same thing. They weren't listening to James Carville or David Axelrod.
Right.
Remember that? Yep. Both of them, they were kind of, now. Well, what do those two guys have in common? They both won a national campaign.
Right.
So let's not listen to people that have won a race before. Let's listen to our ideologues. And I think that's part of the problem that they've got. So.
Is this kind of, I know we always talk in these like big grandiose terms and we're talking politics and all that, but is this a case of this may be the end or at least the banishment for a very long time of the whole wokeism, the whole DEI thing and all that? Because that really seems to be, what's the ideology behind all of this? Well, it's all that stuff. It's communism, DEI, wokeism, the whole bit. I mean, might this be the brakes finally slamming on?
Yeah, I mean, racism is part of that too. I mean, they want people to have jobs just based on the color of their skin and not who they are and what they can do, but what they are. I mean,
right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, hopefully, I think that certainly sets it back, and Trump victory would certainly set that back.
Sure. Well,
but I mean, I think the Senate flips the Republicans. I think they're at least 51. Maybe they get to 52. The House, though, some of those numbers don't look as good. I don't think there are enough Republican challengers in position to win to offset some of the losses of incumbents that they are likely to have. Remember, you've got 7 Republican House members in New York and California sitting in Democratic seats. And, you're in those 2 states, you're still going to have a big Democratic turnout. It's going to be obviously bigger than the Republican turnout. How many seats in that category, in those 7, can they hold?
Right.
That's the unanswered question. I think it's going to be very difficult for them. And they only have a 5-seat majority. So, a small Democratic majority, even if Trump wins, is possible in the House.
Well, let me ask you the flip of that. Are there in red states or in red seats, are there current Democrats who should be kind of sweating it out as well, congressmen?
Yeah, there aren't as many there that hold red seats. But we'll see. I mean, you've got a couple, the 2 biggest ones. Well, there's 3 big ones, really. You've got Mary Peltola, the Democrat in Alaska. Now, that's the most Republican seat that they have 1 seat that elects a Democrat. And that may flip back to the Republicans. Then you have the second largest one is in the state of Washington, in that southwestern corner of the state. And that's what they call an R+11. But they lost it last time. And then the Republicans have the same candidate who lost last time, who got too far out there for a state like Washington. And I'm afraid the same thing may happen again this time.
And which candidate?
And then you've got
the
third is David Valadao in, there's 2 others. David Valadao in Fresno, California. He's won that seat repeatedly. I think even though that's a very difficult Democratic district, he knows how to win it and has won it many times. And so he probably survives. And then in Long Island, you've got D'Esposito there. Anthony D'Esposito is a freshman. He was a shock winner. It was the biggest upset of 2022. I'm not sure he survives. in a presidential year. So
Who's
those are the ones you've got to pay attention to. You have to, and if they lose, then you've got to make up those seats elsewhere.
Right. Who's the Republican in Washington?
Joe Kent.
Right, Joe Kent. He didn't lose by that much, did he?
No, it was very close.
Right.
And it looks like it'll be close again. But, but that's one to watch.
Well, if you win,
that should be a Republican seat.
It should be. It's an R+11, you said.
Yes.
Wow. Well, all right, there we go. That's lots of stuff going on. If you're a betting man today, I ask you every time, Jim, because you're the dude. Jim is the man who knows. He goes to the gym. His name is Jim. Nothing this man knows doesn't know isn't worth knowing. Jim, sitting here today, who wins?
Trump.
There you go. I think that's music to folks' ears. Jim, thanks very much for being on once again. Much appreciated. We'll 13 days to go, and we're all going, hey. So I'm sure we'll be talking to you much again. You're on the road. You're hearing all sorts of things. You're getting all the official stuff. Right. You're doing all your in the polls and in the paperwork and in the election, and the early voting and all that, and you're talking to all kinds of people on both sides. So,
well, that's one is too. I'm not sure how much is going to change between now and the next 12 and 13 days because we've already got the early voting moving forward.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
So it's not the same as it used to be where you try to build a peak and have a crescendo on election day because you've got half the vote that's going to be in before that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things.
In this case, I think that.
It's one of the things. Actually, let me back up. I was getting ready to say goodbye, but I do have a question for you. There's all this like rumor stuff going on that there's a big, giant, this will destroy Donald Trump's story that everybody knows and they're just chasing down in the media and they're about to drop it. I mean, you got a 13-day runway here. And, every day that goes by, more and more voters go off the table, even if there was something they would heard and say, oh my gosh, if I'd have known that, I wouldn't have voted for Trump. Well, you can't go back and change your vote. So every day that goes by that this horrible, scandalous story, I don't know what on earth could that be? Every day that goes by, another clump of voters that it could affect is now off the table. Are you hearing all these rumors about, there's this giant killer story?
What possibly could they say about Donald Trump that hasn't already been said? Yeah. I mean, he's been convicted now of these 34 crimes, supposed made up crimes, and his numbers go up. Yeah. So I don't take much stock in that. Sure, go ahead and try. I mean, what more can they say about the guy?
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, why shouldn't they? I mean, nothing else to do.
Everything they've done this time has backfired on them.
Yeah.
So if they do it again, chances are he gets even stronger. I mean, he just is. It's really kind of a phenomenal thing we've seen with him that he all the things that he comes back from. It just nothing ever seems to stop him or fatal. They can't get the fatal shot on him. Literally
twice.
In a couple of instances. Yeah. But yeah. I don't know what more they could say, so I don't think that's going to be much of a concern.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And the other, the other deal is, just that. I mean, you really expect something to stick at this point in the game, and by the time it would come out and get some kind of traction. I mean, there's one event mover or one event that has the potential to move the election, and it's in Trump's favor. It's this Joe Rogan interview on Friday.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Rogan's already said, I don't think he's a Trump fan, like rah-rah, wearing MAGA hats and stuff like that, but he has said, look, America was better off under Trump. So,
Yeah, but he's endorsed Harris.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
at least he did
but,
before.
It's
he's having Trump on the show now.
Won't that be something if he, isn't it funny? He's endorsed Harris, and Harris is like, oh, crap, I don't know if I should go on Rogan or not, because of the size of his audience. And that's a big, huge, giant podcast. I don't know. It'd be kind of funny if he says, yeah, you know what, Mr. President? I changed my mind. I am going to endorse you. Holy crap.
Oh, yeah, that could be a big deal.
Yeah, it could be. All right. Now we'll officially say goodbye, Jim. Thanks much. And we'll have you on, of course, between now and election. So thank you for coming on again.
Thank you.
All right, the degree of focus on Catholics in this election is unlike anything I have ever seen in 40 years of covering 11 presidential elections now.
I don't know how many Catholics are here, but if you're Catholic, there is no way you can be voting for these people. These people are a nightmare. I don't know what they have against Catholics, but Catholics are treated worse than anybody. So, and by the way, evangelicals are next. You can bet on it. Evangelicals are next, but they label Catholics as potential domestic terrorists. And the fact is that they'll be coming after you soon. These people are sick. These people are very sick people. Christians will not be safe with Kamala Harris as President of the United States. It's not even thinkable.
So what is going on? Pretty simple, really. Christ established the Catholic Church as the means for salvation, period. The devil is very aware of that and has spent his energies down through 2,000 years trying to crush the Catholic Church. He was even present all the way back at the beginning of the Last Supper in the upper room, trying to smash the apostolic band as Christ gave them his own power and authority to be priests and offer his Eucharistic sacrifice down through the coming ages. We know that because Jesus himself turned to Peter and told him, Satan has demanded you all, the apostles, so that he can sift you like wheat. If that isn't a signal call for how the rest of salvation history would play out, nothing would be. Biden, Kamala, Obama, the Clintons, the globalists, the whole shooting match are all controlled by Satan. How do you know that? Because they kill children. And the ones they don't kill, they sex traffic them, they pervert them, they mutilate them. What more proof do you need that Satan is their father? So isn't it interesting that here in this moment of absolute pitched political battle, which is much more spiritual than most, even many conservatives are willing to face beyond lip service, that Satan has marshaled his offspring and their number for one attack against the Catholic Church, one concentrated, massive assault politically. Yes, Trump is the one receiving the incoming, literally, but only because he is standing as something of a shield. Yes, even with all his many flaws, and they are numerous, between Satan and the Catholic Church, who built Western civilization. It's just that simple. Agnostic Elon Musk even gets this on a foundational level. Protestant patriots likewise also understand there is something much more significant playing out here than lowering inflation and getting gas prices under control and sealing up the border. The demons are getting desperate at this point, and it's obvious everywhere you look. For a variety of reasons, they've had the Catholic Church on the ropes for a number of decades now and are very near, in their view, to delivering the death blow against her in the West. On the political front, the devils, who do not know the future any more than you or I know it, are shrieking in horror that Trump might win despite their lies and their malice and everything they have used the whole globalist empire to gin up against him, including trying to kill him. It's not that Trump is a moral man. That's not the point one way or the other. It's that Trump becomes a door to begin the rollback of their assault on humanity, which they have been able to accomplish by weakening Catholic leaders. But a new day is dawning. It just might appear. The old guard, bishops and the Bidens, using the term collectively, are finally exiting stage left. And what's rising up is something much more Christ-centered, albeit still very imperfectly. But that's okay for now. Win the day, win this battle, and then go on to the next one. The devils do not know the future, but they do know that. Just as Satan understood enough in the upper room that he did not know how things were going to play out then, he still knew something was going on. They don't have knowledge of the future, but they do possess angelic intelligence, which is far superior to anything humans have. So, when you hear Kamala saying, "You're at the wrong rally," to followers of Christ, or stampeding around in a furor to keep the child-killing machine going, know that the demons who control her and her party are sensing their moment of victory, of which they were so certain not that long ago, slipping away. Where's the joy gone? Simple answer, it's been replaced by demonic rage and fury. So now is the time to increase prayer and action. Pray and vote. And make sure the communists understand we may be at the wrong rally, but they're on the wrong side of heaven. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Voris.